Weinstein. Alissa has a California multiple subject teaching credential and an MA in curriculum and instruction. She began her teaching career in Spain, where she taught English for 3 years. From there, she moved on to teach third grade and has been for the past 3 years. She is committed to fostering parent-teacher partnerships and is passionate about teaching the whole child. So without further ado, I will pass on the virtual mic over to Alissa to get started with her presentation of blogging in an elementary ELA classroom.
Hi there, my name is Alissa, as Laura said, and I want to thank you for signing up to listen to my presentation today. I am pleased to meet you. In just a moment, I'm going to be showing you a PowerPoint and sort of walking you through the slides. This is the second school year I've used Kidblog. When I first signed up, I did it because I thought it was a really great way to integrate 21st century technology skills with keyboarding practice for third graders who need to know how to type in order to do state testing now. So I'm going to switch from webcam mode back to my screen so I can walk you through the slides. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. Looks like you can. And the benefits, as I said, it's an authentic application of keyboarding skills. There's huge student buy-in. You can reach a wider audience, and your student has a wider audience for publishing their work, and it provides new sources of inspiration for children. So the first exploration when kids log on is sort of knowing how to use the program, practice typing, seeing what that feels like, and then students match graphics. In this case, we were doing poetry in my class. So this was Caitlin, who had pre-composed a poem in her writer's notebook with pencil and paper, and then transferred it to the Kidblog, typing it and working with formatting and creating a picture that matched her theme. Okay, and then once students learn sort of the basics of how to use the Kidblog interface, there's huge buy-in that happens. So I just wanted to show you, this is a screenshot of my students and the number of posts. So I had asked them to create 3 to 5 poems, and you can see that they have done a lot more than that. So in this case, Andrew has 9, Gavin got really into it, and has 23, Kate has 16, and then you can see the comments that they have left each other too is also quite high. Well, that's interesting. The pen marks are still there. Okay, so what I wanted to show you about student buy-in was here on the left is Peter has typed his poem, Belle. It's kind of a funny poem. And then he got to go back in and talk about his inspiration, comment on his own poem. I got the idea from a Pink Floyd song. The song is called Bike. Okay, and then another student, Vanessa, had an opportunity to go in and comment directly on the poem and give specific literary compliments. I loved the part when you said, "I've got a bell with a terrible smell. It does not ring very well. I threw it away just last month." So not only are they getting a chance to be expressive, but they're getting to have a conversation online together. Okay, another benefit is the wider audience, parents and beyond. So a second application that I did this year for the first time of Poetry Blog was using it for an author study response. In this case, my students were studying the works of Jacqueline Woodson. And after reading Visiting Day together as a class, I posted a question. The author doesn't talk about why the father is in prison. Do you think it is important to the story to know that information? Why or why not? So then the students got to respond, and on the right you can see their responses. what was really neat for me is I don't assign daily homework for my students. So I have had comments from parents that they're not always sure what's going on that day in class. But because I could use the Kidblog platform to invite other audiences besides just the students in my class, the parents were able to come in and see the prompt that the students had written about and the different comments, and if they wanted to, compare the quality of their child's response to other children in the class. So here is an example of the guests. In Kidblog, you have an opportunity under the user panel to use join codes to add guests who will not necessarily have the power to be members and publish, but they can comment or they can view. And so this is just a quick view of some of the parents here on the left that signed up to view what was going on. And I got feedback from them. They felt like they knew better what their child was engaged in that day and could see the work that their son or daughter was producing. Okay. Kidblog as a source of inspiration. So beyond just the first poem when Caitlin was copying what she had written and typing it into the computer and finding a graph that matched it, I was finding sort of organically on their own that my students were going in and exploring the headers here, the pictures, finding one that they liked, and then writing a poem to match that graphic. So these are two examples. On the left is Gavin's post, the chair in the beach. What are you doing in the water? Are you swimming in the water? Are you watching the sunset? Oh, what are you doing in the water? And then over here on the right, clouds. So May found a picture of a lighthouse with a bunch of clouds, and that inspired him to write this poem. Clouds are white as sheep. Clouds float in the air like balloons. Clouds are gray and white. Clouds are different shapes sometimes. So again, this is sort of the second morphing of graphics as inspiration. The first one was matching it to a pre-composed poem. The second is using the graphic here to create a poem or inspire a poem. And then you had students inspiring each other and adding things to the graphics. So there are not only options in Kidblog to have students load headers that are already available to them, but then they have a chance to edit and play with and add things on. So in this case, 3D glasses were added on the cat and swirls and dots. And text was added here. So from playing with the picture on the left side, Sophia created a poem, which she called Weird, which is definitely matches the picture that she created. Mexican guinea pig, weird. Cat chasing a dog, weird. Cat with glasses, weird. And then I had another student here, Vanessa, who saw the first student's post, thought it was really cool and wanted to do the same thing, and made a imitation poem called Crazy. Cuckoo time. Crazy is back. Added the crown and the tie on the parrot that was preloaded there. And then wrote her own poem, and at the bottom, credited it to the original author, inspired by Sophia C. So this is like the third level of creativity and inspiration that is happening from the ability to play with graphic tools on the Kidblog site. Let's see. Okay, so oops. Finally, I just wanted you to remember that being creative and sharing your creativity is fun with others, and students are people that love to have fun and learn at the same time. So when they get to reach a wide audience of parents and classmates, comment on each other's works, play with graphics, inspire each other, they're having fun, and they don't realize that they're practicing typing and that they are commenting each other using poetry vocabulary like personification and alliteration and repetition, because they're just having so much fun. It becomes organic and it becomes natural and it becomes something that they want to do in their free time. So I went through that really quickly. I guess I want to start taking questions if there are any, or I can repeat things and go back to slides if you need more time to see them.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Alissa, for your presentation. We will go ahead and open it up for Q&A now. So again, if you guys have any questions on her presentation or just questions in general for either Alissa or myself, go ahead and feel free to type it into the question box on your control panel, and we'll do our best to get to all of the questions. So I have one question, Melissa, that came in that said, when you say that they blog in their free time, do you mean that they're blogging at home, or do you mean that they're blogging in the classroom?
Both. They're doing it at home. They have a username and a password, which they created, and so they have access to it at home. And some students got really engaged when doing it at home. And also when they were given free choice time, or I have something 3 times a week, what I call quiet time, where they can do any kind of quiet activity to recharge and harness their energy. I had students who chose to blog as their quiet time activity.
Awesome. And then I had another question come in asking what venue you use to blog. So you do use Kidblog to blog in your classroom, which is an online tool. But how about devices? What types of devices are your students using?
My school is very fortunate to have one-to-one Chromebook access. So I have a cart of 24 computers, one for each of my students.
Awesome. And then, do students receive a rubric for poetry writing, or are they writing just freely?
Great question. In this case, my rubric was not for the poems that they created, but they were evaluating others' poems based on a rubric. And then I was also looking at assessing the types of comments that they made to show their understanding of poetic devices.
Great. And then this one kind of piggybacks off that last question, actually. So besides poetry, what other types of writing do your students do with Kidblog?
So the only other type that I've tried so far is response to literature, nonfiction writing, and that worked pretty well. I started by creating questions that I would post, and then they would respond in the comment section. And then once they understood that format and the types of questions that generated thought on the part of respondents, then I had half the class come up with their own question after reading a book or a section of a book, and the half that didn't write the question answered a question, commented on a post from a student.
Awesome. Here's another question. Do you connect globally with other classes? And then a second question to that question is, how do you encourage quality comments from your students?
I have not connected with another classroom, although I know that there is a connections way to do that yet. Can you repeat the second part?
Yeah, how do you encourage quality comments from your students in your class?
Oh, I created a post which listed rules for commenting, and had things like they needed to be constructive, compliment type things, because these were considered sort of the finished published product. They needed to use poetry vocabulary, and there was a list of good words to use. Like I had mentioned, repetition, alliteration, personification, repetition. And I gave examples. I went and commented on everybody's first poem, so they would have an example of what a critical literary response looked like.
Awesome. And then we have a question about...
Sorry, can I say one thing about the quality comments? The other thing that teachers have the ability to do is they can control student access to publication. So you can set a comment or a post for review before it can be seen globally by all the members. So if there are concerns about the appropriateness or the understanding of children reaching the quality or the content level that you want, you can set it so that you need to review and manually approve the posts or the comments before the other members of the class will see that.
Great, thanks. And then we have someone asking if you can speak a little bit more about using a structured activity as the first blog post to create a successful publishing experience. If you need me to repeat that, feel free to let me know.
Yes, could you repeat that, please?
Yes. So speaking a little bit more about using that structured activity as the first blog post to create more of a successful publishing experience in the future.
Okay, I think that that's a reference to the first exploration, the first slide that I was talking about. Is it possible to show that screen again?
Yeah, absolutely. One moment.
Okay.
Alyssa, you should.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Not yet, no.
How about now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. So I had about 2 weeks of reading and writing workshop that happened prior to starting Kidblog, during which time we were reading mentor texts and poems by published authors. And then I was having the students mimic them. So this example, Goodbye Pretty Flowers, is a mimicking of a poem called Goodbye My Winter Suit. And so what Caitlin did here was she copied the beginning of the line, goodbye, and then it named something seasonal. And then the second stanza, right on, were the words that were copied from the original author, and then she changed the coming of the new season. So in this case, her seasons, she's talking about a change from spring to summer. So the way that I structured it then was to have them mimic certain types of authors. In this case, it was to learn how to do repetition. And then they had, by the time we started Kidblog, a compilation of maybe at least 5 original poems that either were mimics of published poems by others or were inspired by other activities that we did, like going outdoors and writing down sounds that we heard, or looking at our heart maps and thinking about things that were important to us, or bringing in special objects and writing descriptions of those special objects. So by the time I introduced the blog, they already had poems that they had composed and done some revision to. So they were sort of just at the publishing and typing stage, which was how I introduced it. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks. I'll go ahead and keep it on your screen so you can explore later if needed and go back to different slides.
Okay.
I had a question come in about parents and whether you have parents sign any permission waivers to use Kidblog in your classroom.
No, I don't have them sign any permission waivers. The site is not public. You need to be an invited member to see what is going on. So if you were to go right now and type in the URL of my site, you would see the title and you would see the names of the members. By the way, I only had the students write their first names for safety reasons, but you would not be able to see any of their work or their posts or their comments. So only invited members, the students, or guests that were given the join codes, the parents, are able to see what's going on.
Yeah, and so just going off of that a little bit, Kidblog is completely teacher moderated, so teachers have full control over who can see what in the classroom, and that is all controlled by a privacy page within your individual classes on Kidblog. So like Alissa was saying, she only allows that very limited audience to be viewing her students' posts at this time, so she has no concern over it being public to anyone. Only those people who she invites in will be able to see her students' content. And then going off of that, we had a question come in about Kidblog allowing you to have more than one classroom. And under a teacher premium membership, you are able to have more than one classroom, unlimited amount of classrooms actually. And so when teachers team together, each teacher will have their own individual membership, but they will be able to work together in one classroom in Kidblog. And then another question we had was about adding the graphics to a Kidblog post. And that's fairly simple as well. So whenever you are going to create a new post, or your students are going to create a new post, they're actually able to pick from a library of images that are already uploaded to the site for you, or students are able to upload their own images. And then those little fun stickers and things that you saw during Alissa's presentation, that was on the cat later on in her presentation, and yes, I think you're going to it. It was kind of fun when the students were going back and forth with one another, being inspired by one another. Those are actually in Kidblog, so you're able to add those two images in Kidblog, and students are able to do so as well. So kind of fun and super easy. And
my students also enjoyed using the cameras on their computers to take pictures of things in the classroom as well to add as graphics.
Yeah, and those are really easy to upload to each Kidblog account. So each student will be able to manage their own media library and upload those images that they take or that they use. Someone says beautiful graphics and pictures. I agree.
Thank you. I'll let my students know.
And then I had a question about, I know you talked more about the starting post that you used. For a general ELA classroom, what do you suggest starting with? More of a literary response, or starting right with poetry, or something else?
I recommend starting right with poetry. There's so much engagement in general with students. I think very quickly they come to understand that everyone is a poet. It's just a matter of seeing the world in a certain way and writing down what you see, and they feel my students this year and every year that I've done poetry have felt very capable and confident and excited in terms of creating and reading poetry. So I think that's a really nice place to start because it feels safe and it feels successful.
Great. And then we have one more question here, and then we'll go ahead and finish off the presentation. More of a general than typical lesson that you would use. I don't know, this might mean throughout the year, how students, as they continue to evolve, as they write poetry throughout the year in your classroom, how does that lesson change?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I used it as sort of a unit, and we've moved on from the unit, so I haven't gone back to our poetry blog yet, although as I said, I did continue to use the technology in our author study here. So I guess what I was doing was trying to see if they could utilize the technology of a different genre of critical literary responses as distinguished from creative composition in poetry.
All right, great. And with that, we'll go ahead and round off our presentation today. So thanks everyone for spending some time listening into our webinar this afternoon. If you enjoyed this topic or want to learn anything more about Kidblog or blogging in the classroom in general, we do have a couple more upcoming webinars that you can register for in March. And then as a reminder, again, this recording will be sent to you afterwards automatically in an email in the next couple of days. And then if you have any additional questions that come up after this webinar concludes, or maybe we didn't get to them during this presentation, you will be given a survey towards the end of the webinar session, and you'll be able to ask that question there, and we will get back to you within the next couple of days. And then if you have any questions specifically on using Kidblog in your classroom or your school, you can go ahead and feel free to email membership@kidblog.org, and we will get back to you promptly. Otherwise, that's it. So thank you, Alissa, for spending some time with us, and thank you everyone else for um, listening to our presentation today.
My pleasure.